So today I would like to have a talk with you about tackling irregular migration and the opportunities for young Africans, part 2. I'm Marije Balt from SpringFactor Research and Consultancy. My talk is focusing on the following. The news is now full of young Africans in boats on the Mediterranean trying to get to Europe, and we're focusing on that very symptom. Now, what I want to do with you is I want to look at the story behind this. Why are young people trying to get away? Why? What are their drivers to leave? What are their drivers to break out? So, my discussion point is that current European policies on Africa are not coherent and do not effectively tackle irregular migration. So instead, they inadvertently promote further drivers for young Africans to break out. What to do? And that's something we will talk about now. First, I would like to show you our research findings from discussions and interviews with young Africans from the Sahel and from West Africa mainly. Now, I spoke to young people who are both, let's say, economic migrants, political refugees, etc. And what I've seen is that the distinction between those categories is often blurred in practice. So that's why I'm not making a distinction right now. What we're seeing, both young Africans there and those who have already arrived here have similar stories on what makes them to break out of their environments. So, why do young people look for alternatives and want to break out? This was the main question behind the interviews. And what we're often seeing here is, as you can see in the visual, that access for young people is denied to the assets that they most need. The assets to transition to adulthood, jobs, access to land, access to finance, access to a political, economic, social role to play in their society. And the normal exchange which is going on with the elites up there is not really going for young people, the majority of them, which is not part of the elite. Because young people don't seem to be an interesting constituency for them. So they don't get much in return, and there's many obstacles and constraints for them. So we see them often coping in the informal sector. While they're thinking about a public sector job, they won't get it. They won't get it because it's only for the elite. And they work in the informal sector trying to make a living, but at the same time they feel alienated and they feel outcasted. They're thinking about another life, but they don't have a perspective here, and it's not gonna come because the system is pressing them down. Now, the international responses in working with youth in Africa has been fairly mixed, and I'm talking now about the development response, which is mostly on a target group approach. So it's now a very fashionable topic, working with youth, but before it was gender and before it was another target group. The problem with that is that if you only help young people, then the other groups which are not being supported will get jealous. It causes grievances. So this is a situation which is not very sustainable. Also, we don't base our support on youth-specific constraints, which depends on the specific context, and it can differ village per village. It's cumbersome, but you need to know. Often there's also a technical approach which doesn't take into account the political economy behind it, which is how the different groups relate and what kind of positions they have in society. If we don't know how that works, then it doesn't make any sense because you don't know how the system works. Also, when we support youth, we often work only with them. So skills, coaching, access to finance, and then they're ready. But nobody is waiting for them. So employers there or companies are not hiring young entrepreneurs to do the work. So if there's no demand, then what are we doing this for? These young people are ambitious and want to do something but can't do something. And also the last thing is we work in institutional silos. This is only development. But also from the diplomatic or the political side, we have to work on getting a better youth policy and more structural, systematic. And also the security policies, which is what part 1 is about, should not undermine youth. So is this too little, too late? That's the question. Because of course the African population is growing exponentially, and we're looking at 70% of them being under 25. So there's some urgency in this. And many have already decided to go for alternatives in order to make a buck. It's understandable. There's many criminal groups around that offer short-term gains, but of course with long-term ramifications, negative ones. And other people have decided to leave in order to, make something of their lives, and it's very understandable. Very understandable, but if there's 600,000 young people waiting in Libya alone right now to cross the Mediterranean, then it becomes a bit of an issue for us as well. So what is important? What can we do? We can pay attention, not only, we should pay attention to the unintended consequences of our policies, and every policy should be checked on whether it exacerbates youth undermining structures. For example, the army and the police, how do they behave towards youth? Are we strengthening their role? And so is that promoting repression? That can really be a push factor for youth. We also have to be aware, especially in development, whether there's capture by predatory elites. Predatory elites that know everything that is happening, all the money that is going wherever, and they might capture the support that is meant for young people. What we really need to do is promote coherent policies for youth inclusion and participation and empower youth. Of course it's being done now through projects, but it needs to be done much more comprehensive and structural. We need to work with African governments in order to promote that. It is possible, but it's a painstaking process and it's going to take a long time. But if you do it in a concerted effort, it will work. And also at other levels, we need a locally led and politically smart approach. And there's many people who know a lot about this. Let's engage those people. So lastly, we should work with partners that actually have a leverage on elites, those elites up there, and government, in order to have a long-term strategy to engage young people that will be the majority or are the majority of their constituency, and that are going to need a sustainable perspective to build up a life in their own countries. And in that sense, for us to be coherent in promoting that. Thank you.